Can I ask you this? Is there a true understanding? We've been fascinated by this for years on the show, listening to these stories that come in about people that are being resuscitated long after they should have been, and they're fine. No brain damage, no interior damage. And now they're saying that the brain may actually continue to process for up to 10 minutes after death. What is the real theory? I mean, does modern medical science really understand death yet? Because we read all these articles and hear these news stories of people that wake up in the morgue that are resuscitated 45 minutes after their death. It seems like we only think we have a grasp of what the concept of death is.
Yeah, I don't think we understand it at all. I don't even think that we are close to it, but it doesn't mean we should stop inquiring or stop asking the question.
Right,
and
yeah.
one of the best examples I use to illustrate that point is, 5,000 years ago, we didn't understand how beer was made. They would simply leave a barley mash outside of their homes and for several days, and then suddenly there were bubbles, and they thought that the gods or the alcohol spirits had come and converted it to beer. But what we know now is that just spores of yeast in the atmosphere would settle on top of this mash and you process its food source and then ferment it and produce beer. Now we understand that. Then we didn't. And I actually think that probably what is happening is something that we just don't have the science yet to describe. I don't think it fits Newtonian physics. And I think that science is slowly kind of coming to that realization too. But we certainly should continue to ask the question and to hold it in curious regard. And I think if we give it that energy and as a scientific brain, eventually we probably will understand it and be able to explain it in ways that are quite logical, but still preserve the mystery of this experience of consciousness outside of the body.
Have you encountered any stories with a person who has had a near-death experience, and when they come back, they're altered? Not in the, oh my God, I love and embrace life more, but their personality has dramatically shifted. They used to love spaghetti, now they can't stand it. They used to love the sound of children giggling, now they can't stand it. There was like a fundamental change, as though a different person is now running the ship.
Well, I'm going to give you a rabbit hole right now that we might have to follow up on another interview. Okay. But actually, the personality changes happen more when we see organ transplant, where they actually take in the DNA of another person. And that's usually when we'll see more personality changes as far as likes and dislikes. But where we do see physical transformation around near-death experiences has to do more with sensory perception. I've had a couple of patients who have had near-death experiences, confirmed cardiac death, and came back with this expanded sense of awareness. I guess we would call them psychic, or where they would be able to foretell events, that they seem to have this sense beyond linear time space and would be able to predict things. I had another patient who had worn glasses and hearing aids for years, and after his cardiac arrests, he actually had several during his hospital stay. When he finally was discharged, and I saw him actually in our clinic in follow-up, he couldn't wait to tell me what had happened, because he actually, for about 3 weeks after his cardiac arrest, he did not need glasses and he could actually hear perfectly. He said that colors were brighter, more vivid, and unfortunately for him, that ability slowly faded over time. But when he got to that 3-week mark, he seemed to kind of stabilize, and his hearing had improved, and his glasses, his vision had actually improved too. So that was incredibly curious to me, that he had some transformation on a cellular level that improved eyesight and hearing.
Doesn't it make you wonder, though, is it really a cellular level? Or do we perceive and believe in things? If we believe we're going deaf or having visual problems, do we start to give into that? Almost like the Matrix. I mean, we start to buy the false story, because it sounds like medically a heart attack, from everything I've understand, messes up your vision and can affect your hearing, as opposed to bringing it back. And what does medical science say about that? How is there a regeneration of optical acuity or hearing ability?
I think medical science has actually crossed politely to the other side of the street and chose not to engage with it. Because, I mean, when you talk about that with hardline scientists, they are scientific materialists and actually choose not to engage that question at all. And that's unfortunate, because it's an opportunity to really try to understand the human body and how it's interacting with the consciousness or the mind or the spirit, or however we choose to. But it's very uncomfortable for them. So I'm not sure we're there yet as a human race, a scientific mind, to be able to adequately investigate it. But it is curious. Isn't
that kind of unnerving as a doctor in the medical field to realize we still don't really grasp a lot of what we're doing and the effects that it has?
I guess I don't find it unnerving. I find it more curious and a stark reminder that we think we know everything, but we don't. And we have a very limited understanding of how the human species works. I think we have a good grasp on the body. I think we're pretty good body mechanics. But I think, until we're willing to take it to another level to try to understand what consciousness is. And I think there are people there are scientists who are researching consciousness, but they're still trying to stuff it into that model, that scaffolding of physical matter reality. But I think that it doesn't fit. I think we have to expand our curiosity to include a different science, a different paradigm, a different energy system. And I don't know what that is. I'm not sure any of us do. But it certainly is a direction that we should, in which we should move. That's our quest, is to try to understand it.
There are near-death experiences. There are what is referred to as shared death experiences, where people that are in the room with their loved one at the moment or moments leading up to the transition will also share in this kind of supernatural phenomena. Have you been in one of those positions yourself where you're there and you're acutely aware that it's not just the ramblings of a fading patient, but that there is something pretty natural to what's going on?
Certainly. I mean, and that's curiosity for me as well. I've not had a personal shared near-death experience, and I've actually not heard of that in my patient cases, but I've actually read about it. But what is more common, and actually what traditional physicians will easily embrace, is the bedside visitations at the end of death. In fact, as patients near death and they actually start talking with loved ones who have crossed over, many physicians that I've worked with will say, well, the end must be near, because they're starting to talk to people who have crossed over, which I think is fascinating, that general medical science can actually acknowledge that. Not science, but actually physicians and care providers, but not expand it to out-of-body or near-death experiences. But I think that is just the burden of evidence, and we're submitting to the fact that it's a pattern, a repeatable pattern that we see over and over and over again when patients are actively dying, that there seems to be a moment of clarity where if they were unconscious before, or not moving well before, or not speaking well before, that they will have kind of a renewed surge of physical ability and clarity, and they tend to zoom in on beings that we can't see and actually converse with them.
It's funny too, that resiliency just before death. My good friend, one of my oldest friends and almost like a brother to me, Rick, his uncle, who we were very close to, was fading and went into a coma. And the family was there visiting with him every day, and there was no response. And finally everybody decided, well, we're going to go down to dinner. And they went down to dinner. My friend Rick's ex-wife called the room to try to talk to somebody to get an update. The phone ringing, all of a sudden Uncle Bill picks up the phone. And so I've already told Tim this because I think the most annoying sound in the world is the sound of an old-time phone ringing. That.
Oh, yeah.
I told him when I go into a coma, you put something next to me that rings and I will wake up just to not have to hear that.
just to get rid of it.
But he woke up. They come back to the room. He's sitting up in bed watching Gunsmoke and eating a meal. And they're all like, holy God, you're back. How did this happen? He's like, the damn phone was ringing and woke me up. So they're all just unbelievable. And he's resilient. He's happy. He's in it, eats dinner, watches Gunsmoke, talks with the family. They leave. He dies.
Wow.
It was this unbelievable moment of just kind of, this is all the strength I have left. He pulled it up, brought it back, said hello, had that last meal, got that granted wish to give hugs and kisses goodbye and goodnight. Everybody went home feeling much better, and that's when he let go.
What a gift to that family. Yeah. And certainly we do see that where, and we actually, hospice workers will tell patients' families, don't be surprised if you see a moment of residual, kind of a second wind where they're clear, they have clarity, they will talk to you, they're coherent after days and sometimes weeks of not being coherent. So that is a phenomenon that while we don't understand it, we certainly recognize it in mainstream medicine and prepare families for that, because if you don't prepare them for that, it can be confusing and it can fracture the trust they have in the medical team, that maybe that we haven't done all we can to hold on to the physical loved one. But because it is so common, certainly much more common than the out-of-body or near-death experiences, it's become part of our medical vocabulary to inform patients and loved ones the loved ones of patients that this could well happen before they actually die.
I'd like to tell real quickly before we go to break a quick story and thank the amazing staff at Election Brothers Hospice Care in Elk Grove Village, Illinois. My mother passed away in November, as many of our listeners know. And the staff there was so loving and so caring and understood. And I would talk to many of the staff members out of the room to chat about, what kind of experiences they had and what they would do. And I said, have you ever had a paranormal experience here? And the male nurse that had been taking care of my mother, David, laughed and he said, yes, as a matter of fact, I have. And he said, one night a woman had passed away. Her family had left for dinner and she had been fine and just closed her eyes, take a nap and then slipped away while they were gone. And I walked in to find her that way. And he said, and then I had to go make the heartbreaking call. And he said, as he went to go make that call, he saw her form walk out of the room and approach him. And he said, don't worry, darling, I'm letting them know they'll be back for you soon. And she just turned and went back to the room. And I thought, what a powerful moment. I mean, here he witnessed this himself. And again, instead of flipping out, he just looked at her spirit and said, they're coming back for you, honey. They'll be here soon. And wow, that brought me so much comfort that this was the guy taking care of my mom.
Sure.
And that's a powerful moment. When we come back, I'd like to know, have you had an experience where you've seen perhaps spirit activity from one of the patients that you've worked with? And we'll hear some of the fascinating stories you've collected for the book as well. But now we're going to go into the Darkhives, where we expose a true tale from me, Darkness Dave, in the new Theater of the Mind, brought to you by Audible.com. This is Between the Worlds by Darkness Dave. My room was filled with visitors and medical staff alike, all stopping by to check on my recovery after an emergency gallbladder removal. The pain was unreal, and I was connected to a wonderful pain reduction system, the morphine drip, and with a push of a button could control my own pain-pleasure principle. And control it, or perhaps over-control it, I did. That's when I started to notice a very strange situation unfolding in my hospital room. I realized that aside from the busyness of visitors and nurses checking on me, I had, unbeknownst to the others in my room, a large gathering of shadowy figures watching over me, patiently waiting for those moments when I could see them and they could attempt communication. Now, I know what you're all thinking. Drugs, hallucinations, wild imagination, and I cannot for certain disagree. However, I know that these moments, when I could see them, are as burned in my memory more clearly than the conversations and interactions I was having with the living, breathing visitors in my room. Never before had I experienced such a strange and surreal situation. While my eyes were open, I could see, hear, and communicate with all of my fleshy, warm-blooded friends. But when my eyes closed, I could still see every detail of my room, with the exception